Auntie, how are ye? Welcome back to the Candlelit Tales podcast and this year's Samhain specials, inspired by the folklore collections of Lady Jane Wilde, famous mother of a famous son. In this episode, Aaron is telling the story, The Dead Are Dancing. You can listen back to our previous Samhain stories to get in the mood for Halloween and subscribe on YouTube, where you can see these tales in a playlist. This podcast was brought to you by our supporters at Patreon. You can join them over at patreon.com/Candlelit Tales and check out our website, candelittales.ie, to see our upcoming shows. You can also find details of our upcoming courses. Our year-long deep dive into the Celtic calendar, Turning the Wheel Together, is open for applications right now. And our crash course in storytelling, Answer the Noble Call, is available too. You can find links in the show notes to both of those. You can like, comment, subscribe, and above all, enjoy. And for now, hey Aaron, tell us a story.
On one of the islands out west of Ireland, there are many past Mayo and Clew Bay. 300 and more, they say, these islands stretch far and wide. And when those that climb Croagh Patrick reach the summit to look down on the west coast of Ireland, they will see these scattering of islands, far and wide, stretching from the north coast all the way down and around the westerly coast to the south. Each of these islands inhabited once upon a time, but so many of them now left for sheep and cattle. Not many go these ways, they say, for they're inhospitable now, though times before there were many lived on these lands. And many before had tales of those who came to these islands. There was one particular fisherman by the name of Hugh who would like to go to these islands to explore them. There was often sad stories associated with people who had come here during the famine times, trying their best to sow potatoes, but dying. His mother used to recount the stories she had told and passed on. Those that had come to her ears were simple enough, of families being found on the coast of some of these islands, even just children there, with their parents gone back to the mainland to search for grain or bread or fish, but not being able to come back, not having the strength to row back to their children. They had left them to die on their own. These islands were haunted by those children's ghosts, and those islands were full of old stories no one could tell anymore, for there were no ears to listen to the telling. Though at a ruined castle on the south side of one of these small islands west of Clew Bay, there is a stone circle next to the ruins. And the story Hugh had heard was that during the good old days when it was full of feasts, strangers had come off the boat, wandered in with the small inhabitants gathering around to feed them and offer them drinks. It had been encroaching and coming close to Samhain Eve, though no one thought otherwise when these young men all got off their boats, wearing fine tunics and large jackets. They came into the hall, and though they were very happy to receive the food and drink they were given by the islanders, each one of them had taken out a silver knife when they had been given drinks, and they stabbed the table. Strange enough as it was, those locals didn't want to upset the men who had drawn their blades. But the very next morning, none of the islanders had seen them go, but their boats were no longer in tow, and every one of these strange men had disappeared into the morning's light. And when they went back to the table where they had fed those strangers, they saw that where the knives had sunk into the tables and chipped pieces of wood out, a silver coin was left. Many silver coins were gathered and spent by the islanders, who were delighted for their fortune and called the host a fairy host of plenty that gave beautifully to them, though what they had paid for remained unknown. Many thought the number of coins that had been placed on the table was just in line with the number of people who had lived there, and everyone had gotten a silver coin, though come the end of that year, not one single person lived to tell that tale. The fairy host, perhaps, buying the souls of those who lived there, taking them away and down underneath the sea to their home under wave, or inland to the under hills, to the many islands and aspects of the other world where the fairy realms do remain. Though Hugh did not believe such tall tales, his mother always warned him to be careful when he spent a night out on these islands, for he was a fisherman. He could pull up his curragh wherever he wanted and cast his line out, and on fine days he would watch the clouds wash over the sky in silvery hazes and greys that washed the blue away till the dark navy descended and darkness took over the sky and the sea below. This mirror reflection of the waves washing and lapping on the shores was hypnotic for Hugh, who liked nothing more than to stare out beyond and think of times gone by and these ghosts that remained on these islands, the many, many lives who had lived, been alive for such a short and harsh time, and who had left their mortal coils to perhaps stay floating out on the waters, washing up on the shores. But he had no fear for them, for they were ghosts, they were spirits, they were simply gone beyond this veil that is spoken of so frequently. He had no reason to fear these otherworldly beings, though his mother always warned him to pay heed to the fairy hosts, especially as it drew closer and closer to Samhain's Eve. This was the time when the veil was at its thinnest the night before November, and a time where the fairy hosts come and maybe steal those mortals away who do not pay respect for the dead, who have their leave to wander over the lands of Ireland. And so, paying no heed to his mother's warnings, he decided to row himself out to this small island in which he had spent many a time on before. The fairy ring was enclosed, nice amount of trees, not too exposed. He could light a fire and keep himself warm. Where the castle was old and damp, it offered no hospitality now any more for him. It was interesting to watch the moon creep up behind it. Landing full and high in the sky, this moon shone burning bright down on the waves below, down on top of Hugh's little fire, growing smaller by the hour. He had eaten the fish he had caught that day. His belly was full, but his mind was wide awake, perhaps with the light in the sky. He thought he'd best walk around the island and gather up as much wood as he could and keep this fire burning for the rest of the night. There was many little woodlands in the corners of this island, and so he went walking, and it usually took over an hour to walk all the way around the island. So he went up and around, gathering sticks as he went, when suddenly he saw a strange sight. fire twinkling bright, and music floating over the wind towards him, when he saw a large group gathered down towards the middle of a clearing and walking his way, and they dancing and skipping and jumping about. Well, in a matter of moments he came up to this fairy host, he was now fairly sure, as pale skin, bright eyes greeted him with devilish smiles. "Oh, there he is now. Hugh, how are you? Are you coming along to the do? 'Tis time to go dancing, don't you know?" A strange, impish-looking man cackled laughter and walked on past him, as an old woman with a huge cloak came carrying a chest and handed it to him. He caught this chest in his arms as she asked him, "Please, dear, you'll carry that for me. My back is giving out." With that, Hugh gathered the chest up and hunkered down as he began to walk amongst this procession, going up and around the way he had come, but landing back towards his own fire, around the fairy ring, around those old stones. Well, when he got there, the weight of this chest began to burden his arms so much that he leant down and left it, and as soon as he had touched the ground with the chest, it sprung open, and a small, wizened, old, dark-haired man with pale, wrinkled skin and a long beard looked up with him with a grin. "Thank you, Hugh. You're very good now to be carrying me down here. Won't you help me out a little bit more, though? We're looking for more firewood." Well, Hugh didn't really know what to do, but he knew not to accept any drinks or food given from the fairy host, as he might be trapped with them till the end of time, and so he was going over to the wood that he had gathered earlier to tend to the fire. The music lifted lightly, and suddenly the king of the Sidhe walked into the midst of this fairy host. King Vara, his name, emerald eyes staring with angry furrowed brows. He pointed his long finger at Hugh, and calling him by his name, he said, "What are you doing here, Hugh?" Suddenly a chill went down his spine, and he looked around. The king of the fairies cackled and laughed, and suddenly the whole fairy host laughed and cackled and jeered as the music began to drum up, and suddenly the fire began to roar, and they began to dance so wildly. Hugh cowered back, but suddenly arms were pulling at him and reaching, calling and dragging him into the dance, and it was full and hot and heavy. Feet were dancing and jumping. He was being dragged and pulled left and right by this fairy host, but they weren't fairies no more. He looked at the eyes, the gleaming ones, the faces, until he saw the face of his own father rushing towards him, cackling, and with his fist clenched, he came swinging at Hugh, who fell back into the arms of other fae, but they weren't fae at all this day. Every one of them, the look of someone lost in the town or on the coast, people drowned with wet hair, a girl burnt, and she staring at him with burnt skin on her, and she still dancing and laughing. And then in the midst of all of the movement, and all of the flurry and the laughing and the cackling and the fist swinging, Hugh saw blonde hair, pale skin and ruby red lips. Ellen, his beloved from such a long time ago. She's standing there, ghostly white. Her heart had given out. She had had a weak heart, so the doctors said, though Hugh's mother always claimed she'd been lured away by the fae, a fairy trick to lure her away. And there she was, singing and dancing and skipping around. And she walked to hew a goblet, gold and shining in her hand. She reached out and offered it to him for a drink. Well, Hugh looked at his beloved and knew he could drink this down to its last drop, hold her in his arms and be with her for the end of time. But suddenly, he realized all of the cackling and all of the laughing and all of the drumming was just for this moment to lure him into a sense of security. He threw the glass down on the flames. It erupted in green smoke, and he fell back. And he awoke. Long after sunrise it was. Embers in the fire. He seemed to have a bruised head. An empty bottle of poaching left beside him. He remembered packing blearily the day before. The remains of fish tails by the fire to prove he had certainly eaten his fill. Then the memories of those dancing dead came back to him. He looked at his arms, and he saw black handprints from where he had been dragged and snatched and pulled into the dance. That was all that was left to prove his tale. And though he went back home and told all who would hear it of his story, many didn't believe until he showed them the marks of the dead on his wrists and upper arms. He showed them where his own father with an angry fist had struck him and hit him just below the shoulder. The imprint was there, dark and black. So he never went back out to the island where the ghosts of the Fae had dragged away. He never went back, on Samhain Eve at least. Although every time he came around and he heard fairy music, music that might be like the fairy music, he would smile to know that at Samhain Eve, no matter where and no matter what, the dead are out there dancing.
Secrets got all the druids gold. I took them from a tree by the side of the road. We're more than a story or a tale to be told, woven through our being, it's ancient and old. Realize your mind, come back to the fold. The veil is thin, the doors are wide. Oh, and the dead are dancing tonight. All in your line, are by your side. Oh, and the dead are dancing tonight. Give to me philosophy, we're kindred in the mystery, mentality, engaged in our history, through country, creating our own destiny, manifestly. More than a story or a tale to be told, woven through our being, it's ancient and old. Realize your mind,